All right, welcome everyone. Really appreciate you joining us on our first webinar from MACD here. We are going to be going through a whole litany of topics and subjects to cover. And before we get started, just want to do some brief introductions, and then we can get into the presentation. So my name is Dan Moylanen. I am the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Conservation Districts. And I am joined tonight by John Switzer and Mr. Steve Law, if they would like to take a quick second to introduce themselves and a little bit about their background.
Go ahead, John.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Switzer. I'm the Conservation Programs Manager with the Environmental Stewardship Division within MDARD. And I'm glad to be here with you all, and thanks for joining us.
And I'm Steve Law. Good evening. I was a NRCS employee from 1983 to 2014. Worked with districts in Bay, Hillsdale, Missaukee, Ingham, Clinton, and a number of districts around the state besides. And I'm delighted to be here. This looks like a great group, and we're going to give you some information just to get you started.
All right, thanks guys. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And again, this is just, we were lamenting that we weren't able to do this in person, as this is something that normally we would have in various locations around the state. But given the constraints of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was maybe an opportunity here to where we could do this as in a webinar format to maybe reach a little bit of a wider audience. So again, this is being recorded, so this will be available afterwards on MACD's YouTube channel. So you're definitely encouraged to watch it if there's content that you need to come back and revisit. But we'll share that link with everyone over email following the presentation. So with that, what is the Michigan Association of Conservation Districts? We can tell you a bit more about what we do as an organization. So we are the member association for all 75 of Michigan's conservation districts. And we are primarily supported by membership dues. And, we work to strengthen Michigan's conservation districts through leadership, through information and representation at the state level. So we do this through legislative advocacy, through public outreach, through education and training, such as this webinar, grant support and business programs that provide Michigan conservation districts with the skills and tools to better serve their communities. So MACD consists of 10 regions all around the state. You can see on the map here where the regions are. You can also find, I know it's a little bit hard to read there, but if you go to macd.org, you can find your region. You can also find who your local region chair, as well as vice chair or secretary treasurer, if your region has one. So we function, I'll tell you a little bit more about the history on our next slide of MACD. If Christy, you want to get a little, there we go. All right, so the history of MACD, so we were organized in 1940 as the Michigan Soil Conservation Districts Incorporated, which then later became Michigan Association of Conservation Districts in 1978. So we were established to represent and provide services to Michigan's 75 conservation districts throughout the entire state. And we are a non-governmental, nonprofit 501c3 organization. So often we can function as a fiduciary for conservation districts into our local unit of government. So keep that in mind. Should you ever have some grant opportunities that require 501c3 status, that's where we can help. So we serve our members by providing a voice on issues that affect agriculture and natural resource management. For example, today we sent out a notice about a recent vote yesterday in the Michigan House Appropriations Committee regarding funding for all 75 of Michigan's conservation districts. So we do advocacy for conservation districts and the programs at the state and federal level. And we also provide timely communications and information anytime there's any changes in law or relevant pertinent information that's critical to our members. We usually try to inform you and keep you up to date as much as possible. And then we also arrange training, education opportunities such as this. And then we also have a summer conference as well as a fall convention to where we offer forums where issues of mutual concern can be discussed. So as always, we're stronger together than as one. So that's where we really come in as the statewide association to help bring the entire conservation community together. So How to engage in the MACD. So again, as we mentioned, we have the 10 regions, and each region with the chairs and vice chairs serve on our state council. And so then we have, again, the regional representatives who serve on that board, where we host quarterly meetings to address larger business for the nonprofit, as well as issues that come up within our community. In addition, we also have region meetings, which tend to happen on a variety of basis and frequencies. Some do it quarterly, some meet more often, but if you connect with your regional chair, they should be able to help get you connected to those regional meetings. And then we also have committees and work groups, such as the executive committee for MACD, which consists of our president, our vice president, and our treasurer. And with that, we also have our finance committee, which is chaired by our treasurer, Nancy Siskey. And that's where we handle all financial aspects of MACD as an organization. And then we also have our legislative work group, which is sort of a communications and outreach focused subcommittee. And we basically devise and craft our overall legislative advocacy strategies there. And then lastly, we have our summer conference planning committee, which is also our fall convention planning committee. And so if you're interested in getting involved in any of that programming or serving in any of these, we welcome you, and we would love to have your involvement. So we also provide communications. We do this in the form of email correspondence. If you have not registered on our website into our system, we highly encourage you to get connected there. You can connect with your district admin or manager. They should be able to help get you a profile set up on the account on our MACD website. This will give you access to register to our summer conference, as well as our fall convention, and just to make sure that you get the discounted rates. In addition, we send out regular newsletters. I'm working as our new executive director to try to increase our frequency of these to a quarterly basis. And lastly, want to mention that we definitely have our social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Instagram. So you're highly encouraged to follow us in all of those locations. But I do want to note this bullet point about our Slack workspace. So if you are not familiar with Slack, I highly encourage you to join us there. It's a unique new tool that helps sort of eliminate some of the redundancies within email communications. And right now we're up to over 168 users in the workspace, which represents people from the entire conservation community around the state. So it's a great way to kind of collectively use each other's knowledge and to work with each other to collaborate or to get answers when we have questions on various topics. So you're highly encouraged to join. I'll send out information on how to join and as a follow-up to this presentation. And then lastly, you can engage with MACD by attending our trainings like this, our summer conference, fall convention, and our director's training. So a little bit on the origin of conservation districts. So Mr. Bennett's statement really still rings true today. And conservation districts have a really long history. And in the early 1930s, the Dust Bowl really made the need to conserve natural resources very clear. So people like Hugh Hammond Bennett really understood that it was essential to assist the nation's farmers to address soil erosion issues. And Bennett worked with Congress, and in 1935, the Soil Conservation Act was ratified. And then the Soil Conservation Service was formed under the United States Department of Agriculture, which would later become the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, with whom we partner at the local and state level in a variety of ways. So to carry out the work of soil conservation services, districts were created, and basically, we're the community-based organizations, because ultimately with farmers and landowners, they can be a little skeptical as to allowing government entities onto their property. And we found out that, by having a local organization, it tends to work better as a model, because they're gonna trust Bill, who owns the farm down the street, more than they're gonna trust USDA coming on their property to engage in their programming. So in Michigan, the legislature passed the Michigan Soil Conservation Districts Law as Act 297, a public act in 1937. And the West Ottawa Soil Conservation District was the first district organized in Michigan. And then in December of 1940, 7 soil conservation district leaders developed basically the Michigan Association of Soil Conservation Districts, which is now MACD. So we'll go on to our next slide. So understanding the role of what conservation districts are and what we do. So we're a governmental subdivision of the state, and we were created by a referendum to provide local conservation assistance to local communities. And then again, we're governed by a locally elected board of directors. And we develop long and short-term plans to address conservation. So, some common examples are, reducing soil erosion and controlling sedimentation of the waters of the state. We encourage conversion of all mismanaged lands to productive use. We enhance and protect the ability of land to produce food and fiber. We promote the maintenance and aesthetic values of land and its related resources. And we encourage the use of effective methods of surface and groundwater management. And then we assist landowners in controlling non-point sources of pollution to surface water, groundwater, and the air. So, and with that, we also educate residents on agriculture and natural resource practices. All of our programming is voluntary, none of it is regulatory. And we found that it's a good mechanism that works. And hopefully with your help, we can continue to do that all across our state. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to John Switzer. And we're going to talk a little bit now about just some of your responsibilities and roles as directors.
Thanks, Dan. And so conservation district directors have specific powers to address soil and water conservation needs within their community. And with all powers and authorities comes responsibility. And so we're going to talk a little bit tonight about what some of those responsibilities and what some of those roles are. You'll see there's a list there. We're going to highlight just some of the key responsibilities here tonight. But as we get into this, you're going to see there's a lot of depth here. And so if you go to the next slide, Christy, we do have some resources available. And normally when we do these trainings, we have a nice packet with printed materials and handouts for folks to reference. Unfortunately, that's one of the disadvantages of doing these virtual events, but we do have these resources available to you, and they can be found. The Conservation District Operations Manual is on our website. It also should be housed in with your district manager in your office, as well as a copy of Conservation District Law. And then MACD has put together a really nice Conservation District Director's Handbook that I think Dan is actually in the process of revising. So that should be available soon, as well as MACD's Learning Management System, which will provide content like this training and others for available review and education purposes. So there is a lot of information out there that can help reinforce what we're bringing here tonight. So don't be too scared if we throw a lot at you here. So moving into the first key category, legal responsibility, legal compliance. As Dan mentioned, conservation districts are governmental subdivisions of the state, and they have statutory powers and responsibilities, and the authority to address natural resources and conservation issues. As locally elected public officials, directors are responsible for ensuring their district operates in compliance with the applicable laws. And you see here a list of some of the more common laws that we'll be covering here. So many of these apply directly, some a little bit indirectly, and we're gonna kind of dive into the more common ones. So starting with conservation district law. This is actually part of PA 451, which is of 1994, which is a Natural Resources Environmental Protection Act. There's a subset within that act that we refer to as conservation district law, and it provides the legal authority and the framework for conservation districts in Michigan. This law originated as the original Soil Conservation District Act of 1937. It's been revised many times over the years. However, this is the law that establishes MDARD as the agency that oversees conservation districts in Michigan. It also defines how districts operate in terms of conducting business via public meetings. It clarifies and specifies board duties, election requirements, as well as some of the powers within the district and the board, how districts can cooperate with other districts as well as state agencies like MDARD and others. And it also addresses financial expectations, including passing of appropriations, as well as grant eligibility for MDARD grants. The next couple of laws we'll look at, again, very briefly, Freedom of Information Act. This is the law that requires units of government to operate with open transparency. So it requires things like maintaining certain records for a certain period of time. When someone requests information, there's a certain timeline you need to respond. And you also have to have a policy posted on your website so that folks can know how to access information when they need it. Another one that's a little bit more commonly utilized is the Open Meetings Act, and that's the act that requires government units to conduct business in open settings with full access by the public to participate. It also requires an opportunity for public to make comment on during meetings on activities of the district, and it requires you as directors to make decisions that affect the district in open public meetings with recorded minutes that are available. I just want to point out that if you can go back real quick, Christy, there are very few instances in which districts can go into a closed session. And this is an area that folks can sometimes get themselves in a little bit of trouble. Even in the few instances when you can go into a closed session, there are certain requirements that have to be followed, including minutes need to be taken. No decisions can be made in a closed session. And then any decisions need to be made in the open session. And sometimes it can be awkward. You know, sometimes you're dealing with sensitive topics like personnel issues or other things that frankly aren't comfortable to talk about in an open setting. But this is part of being a government agency and operating in accordance with Open Meetings Act. Additionally, right now, with everything that's going on with the COVID pandemic, there have been allowances for virtual meetings, which typically were not allowed under the Open Meetings Act. There were some recent amendments to that act to make allowances for that. We are currently in a situation where if you have a local state of emergency in your county or within your district, you may continue to host your board meetings remotely, as long as it's the posting requirements are met and it's fully accessible to the public, and that is available through the end of the calendar year, at which point there will no longer be allowance for virtual meetings at this point in time. So just want to keep people updated on that, and I try to keep people posted if and as those rules change. So if we move forward, another law that affects districts is the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, PA2 of 1968. And this is the act that says units of government need to adopt budgets annually, pass Appropriations Act and amend them as appropriate. And in this instance for district, conduct an audit at least biannually. In addition, there's a whole host of employment laws, both state and federal, that districts need to adhere to. So again, just kind of touching on these, but we do have much more detail in the operations manual that can help answer any questions you might have around some of these laws. The next major responsibility for board directors is overseeing the financial health of the conservation district. So directors should cooperate with their fellow board members in establishing sound business practices required for adequate accounting and financial management of the district's financial affairs in accordance with state law and any MDARD guidelines that may be in place. The directors play a role in acquiring and sustaining adequate funding and financial resources for the district to meet its mission, and they should be cooperating with their board members to ensure that operations the funding is necessary to conduct the adequate operations to keep the district running. You know, there's a whole source of funding opportunities for conservation districts, federal and state grants, county and local funding and appropriations, and we're going to go in a little more detail into those in a little bit later in the presentation. So with that, I'll hand it off to Dan, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the different roles that board directors can play as part of the conservation district.
Hey, thanks, John. So talking a little bit more about board governance. So one of the most critical things for board directors is that you're going to want to prepare for meetings in advance as much as possible by reading previous minutes from the meetings as well as financial statements. So this way, when you engage in your board meeting and you show up, you're ready to go, and you can write down any questions that you might have for your admin or for any of your other chairs or other critical positions on your board. You can never prepare enough, as they say. So it's really critical too that you attend and just engage in your board meeting, as well as any district functions that you might have. So this could be maybe tree sale giveaways or distributions. This could be your annual meeting events or other community events that you might hold. Being present and being part of it is something that's critically important, because again, you're a public servant. You're someone who was elected to this position, and so you represent your district in a variety of ways. So be present, be part of it. And then lastly, another role in terms of board governance is just to make sure that you are arranging for capturing of accurate recording. This could be your board minutes or recordings of all proceedings. So again, having just that record is not only legally required, but it's something that's especially important for the overall functionality of your board. So we'll go on to the next slide. So we're going to talk a bit more on the next slide about officer designations. So CD law states that a conservation district board shall consist of 5 directors, and the board shall designate a chairperson annually. And this is actually the only board position a district must designate by law. However, it is strongly recommended that conservation district boards do select officer designations for vice chair, treasurer, and secretary, because these offices have essential functions, and appointment to those offices really spreads the entire board's duties across the board. Delegation is something that's really critically important for any strong functioning organization. So making sure that you have these other positions kind of fulfill all the duties of the board really helps collectively share the workload. So some districts choose to combine these offices. So in some cases, you might see a secretary treasurer, or they leave each office as separate. It's up to your board in terms of how you want to do that. But again, the board is then going to designate the duties of each board position per Conservation District Law, Section 9307. So with that, you can see that, again, just on the slide, a general idea of what each role is in terms of what you can expect to do if you fulfill any of these officer roles. So we can go on to the next slide. So talking a bit more about operations management. So as locally elected public officials, directors are responsible for the operation and management of their district. So directors develop policy, which is implemented by their staff, and your primary duties performed by conservation district directors, either as individuals or as members of the district board of directors, include overseeing the management of all district owned funds, facilities, and equipment, establishing and reviewing district policies. You can find a full list of policies in the CD operations manual that John mentioned earlier. And then, we ensure that conservation districts elections are held in compliance with CD law and are certified by MDARD. You want to make sure to read and understand and approve and sign all conservation district grant agreements. You're going to supervise the preparation of an annual budget and Appropriations Act and maintenance. You're going to maintain the approved bookkeeping system that reflects all income and expenditures. Typically, this is done in QuickBooks. If you are unfamiliar with QuickBooks, we're offering a QuickBooks training at our upcoming summer conference on June 7th and 8th. You want to make sure to manage the preparation of an annual financial statement and provide for a biennial audit. Audits are very critical to make sure that everything is prudent. This is something to help protect not only your staff, but also to help protect you as individual board members, and it's required. Typically for many of the state grants, you need to have an audit. And so then you're also going to work on overseeing district staff, which includes hiring personnel based on district personnel policy. You can review your staff's performance yearly and provide administrative supervision. And then you're also going to draft and review annual work agreements. So in addition, you're also going to do things like attend training sessions conducted by MDARD or MACD and its partners, such as this webinar. And hopefully as a director, you're also remained informed of legislation and policies of local, state, and federal government on conservation issues. This is something, again, we're making sure that you've got your membership on the MACD website. So then you're receiving communications from MACD when we engage in legislative advocacy efforts like the message we sent out earlier today. And then you're also going to want to maintain contact with your local, state, and national public officials to keep them informed of what you're doing as a district and as well as your conservation needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about partnerships later in the presentation tonight so you can see what that looks like. But as a director, it's also your responsibility to just in general, just raise awareness of the district's mission, the products that you offer and the services that you offer. So we also encourage folks to sponsor and then again, just actively participate in public education activities, just to stay informed of local natural resource conservation issues in your community. And then lastly, it's really critical to develop a succession plan for recruiting qualified board members. So identifying key folks in your communities who, may be involved on farms or maybe involved in environmental policy, or maybe they're attorneys who have an interest in environmental policy. Continuing to recruit people, and a great way to do this is by utilizing your associate directorships, as associate directors often can be a great stepping stone into becoming a full director on your board. So with that, we'll go on to the next slide, and so we're going to talk a bit more about just some of the roles in terms of policy. So, the board is entrusted with the authority to establish policies to govern the conservation district. So board policy establishes the parameters and guidelines for board directors, for committees, and staff. All policy decisions should be made by a majority vote of the board and recorded in meeting minutes. And then the adopted policies should be reviewed annually. So the board should ensure the policies have the following qualities. So policies are thorough and complete. So they're covering all likely scenarios and questions. So remember, policies are essentially answers to questions before they're asked. They're solutions to situations before they arise. They're, a defined set of procedures to follow before they're needed. So, they're the rules of the game, so to speak, and ultimately define who has to follow those rules. So it's important that policy language is typically clear, succinct, and understandable. And it's also important that they're fair and equitable and apply to all people. And then lastly, it's important that policies are legal and current with the latest regulations and laws, and they provide for the privacy, security, and confidentiality when required or as prudent. So on the next slide, again, this just gives you a general idea of some of the policies that are required and some of the recommended policies. So the full list can be found in the operations manual. So again, thinking about just some good, absolutely required policies. What's your policy on your district's credit card in terms of who uses it, who has access to it, how those transactions are recorded, how the card is paid. Having those procedures in place is absolutely necessary. In addition, again, as John mentioned, the Freedom of Information Act, as well as maybe investment practices if you end up having any budget surpluses at the end of the year. So other recommended policies to think about, again, just board procedures, partnership relations, chain of command, should the chair not be available, who takes over those responsibilities, et cetera. Thinking about the financial obligations and financial policies. So again, just segregation of duties in terms of financial payment authorization, check signing and payments, fundraising / gifts to the conservation district. And then again, thinking about employment. So this, since your conservation district is an employer, you got to think about ways to protect, your district from a liability standpoint with employees. So just make sure that you've got policies that are, anti-nepotism policies, anti-sexual harassment policies, personnel make sure you have policies on how to handle personnel records, as well as payroll overtime procedures. And then lastly, it's not listed here, but I do want to emphasize that we're really strongly encouraging districts to adopt a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, which is something that'll help ensure that you are, not in giving into implicit biases or other things that can potentially create liabilities for boards as well as you as individual board members. So once again, all of that is in the ops manual, which will be shared in the follow-up email to give you the links to how to find that. So if we go on to our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about your role from the perspective of planning. So planning is so critical for the success and well-being of your district. So you have the authority as a district to address natural resources and conservation issues. So to do this, districts develop natural resource plans, which Steve will talk a little bit more about planning later. But these are, you need to develop, approve, and oversee the implementation of conservation needs assessments, which are 5-year long-range plans that ultimately give an overall picture of what your conservation needs are in your community, and then an annual business plan. In addition, you're going to periodically review the district's mission and vision, just to make sure that they're in alignment with planning efforts. This can be done usually by like a board retreat or a good couple of days of some strategic planning. Generally, this is something that any good organization is going to go through a regular amount of that periodic review of some of those basic principles that drive your organization. So in addition, you're also going to need to monitor their progress towards reaching the goals established in these plans. So it's important to have benchmarks and other things that allow you to measure where you are in those goals in that process. Then you're going to need to also ensure the preparation and distribution of an annual report. Again, this is critical for not only for your overall organizational outlook, but also thinking about the legal requirements. And then lastly, you're going to want to work with the NRCS district conservationists, or DCs, to establish the direction of the district and to accomplish private lands conservation implementation goals. So on our last slide here, in terms of some of your responsibilities, we want to again remind you about your role in providing outreach and advocacy for your district. So to provide representation and leadership with government entities, community groups, and state and national agencies to assure the goal of the districts are met, it's really important that you remain informed of legislation and policies of local, state, and federal government about conservation issues. MACD works to try to inform you and update you with any changes in the legislature or anything that's relevant to conservation issues. And then it's really important that you maintain contact with local, state, and national public officials to keep them informed of the district's activities and conservation needs. So if your district doesn't regularly meet with your state representatives or your state senators, these are really critical meetings to set up so they're aware of the work that you're doing in the community. And right now, especially with yesterday, with the House Appropriations Committee voting down our funding request for all conservation districts, this is really a time where it's critically important that our directors step up and reach out to our public officials that are involved in these decision-making processes. So in addition, not just public officials, but it's important to raise awareness of just the district's mission, products, and services with landowners, with public entities, with, again, just legislative awareness, advocacy, compliance issues, and then state national associations such as MACD or NACD for the National Association of Conservation Districts. And then just thinking about cooperative agreements in your communities. There's a lot of opportunities to where you can work together with other entities where you can partner, and Steve's going to get into this later. But it's critical for you as the directors on your board. You function essentially as the boosters. You are the voice of the district. So you are a public leader. It's important to connect with other public leaders to understand, so they understand, what our role is in our communities. So with this, I'm going to change it over to Steve, who's going to talk a bit more about understanding key partnerships.
All right. Thanks, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to such a big group. I'm a director myself now in my retirement, so I'm learning along with the rest of you. You want to jump to the next slide?
And I think I'm actually going to start this one off.
Sorry, jump the gun on that one.
Yep.
Go ahead, John.
No worries. So yeah, that was a lot that we just threw at you. Hopefully we didn't scare any folks away, especially the new directors. There is a lot, but I just want to remind people that there's resources available to help, and that's really where partnerships come from, or come in. The district conservation districts were developed and rooted in partnership. Back to that quote from Hugh Hammond Bennett. They were devised as a way to get federal resources on private lands. And obviously, nearly 100 years ago, when this started, it was to address the issues associated with the Dust Bowl. Things have obviously evolved a lot over the last 90 years since conservation districts came into existence, and today districts focus on just a whole host of natural resource issues outside of primarily agriculture, invasive species, forestry, wetland issues, water quality, both groundwater and surface water. Really, any natural resource related issues that occur on private lands, districts have a role and do play a role in helping to address those. And so it's important to think about the different partnerships that are out there that can help districts meet their mission. And so we're going to highlight a few of the key partnerships here, but keep in mind there are many, many more than we're going to have time to talk about tonight. So first off, just a quick definition of what partnerships are. And what I really like about this statement here, the two phrases in the middle here, where the parties agree to cooperate to advance their mutual interests in the likelihood of achieving their mission. So keep that in mind. Hopefully you know or know where to find your conservation district's mission. And when you think about these partners and some of the activities you're involved in, don't think about it as, all right, we've got this thing we need to do, this grant or this activity. Think of it as how are we benefiting? What are we bringing to the table to make sure that our mutual interests are being achieved and we're moving forward in our mission. So we've got 4 core partners in Michigan. MACD also at the state level, this partnership exists. MACD, Conservation District Employees Association, MDARD, and then the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. This also exists locally at the individual local conservation district office, the local NRCS through the district conservationist, any employees you might have, and then MDARD, any MDARD grants or our other assistance we provide, working together to address conservation needs on private lands. So a little bit about MDARD. Our role with districts really is twofold. I mentioned earlier in conservation district law, we're identified as the agency that provides oversight for conservation districts. And we do that through my team it's housed within the environmental stewardship division and made up of myself as the manager. We have a forestry assistance program coordinator, Ben Schramm. We've got 5 regional coordinators, and then we also have some admin support. And together we work to help conservation districts do what they do best. We also rely on conservation districts as a partner to deliver our conservation programs, voluntary conservation programs on private lands. Last year, we issued grants to the tune of $6.9 million to conservation districts. And we've had fairly consistent funding to be able to do that for several years. In addition, we've got field staff that I mentioned, the 5 regional coordinators, and really they play a huge role in helping conservation districts do a whole host of their duties and responsibilities. They can help make sure you're adhering to district law. They can help with collaboration amongst other districts, helping to share the successes and stories that you've achieved. They can build support for state and federal funding. They can help make sure you're adhering to all your legal requirements and expectations. We also have a role in certifying district elections, and we play a role in helping to make sure that those elections are conducted properly. And so you see here on the map, this is the coverage area of our 5 field staff. Hopefully you know who your regional coordinator is. If you're brand new, I see that you have a couple pretty new folks there. I imagine they'll be reaching out to you soon if they haven't already. But keep in mind, these folks are here to help you, to help with development, grant writing, search and selection, all kinds of things. And so really are a resource available to you, especially as you think about all the stuff that we've covered under roles and responsibilities. We're here to help, and we developed a new way to do that. We've got a new approach we call operations reviews. We've developed these 4 elements for success And really, these are developed to identify the key areas and activities that districts and directors and staff can and should be doing in order to have the best chance for success. And so we've broken them up into these 4 categories: legal requirements, policy standards, board governance, business management, and then planning and conservation delivery. And so the idea is the regional coordinator will work with you and or your manager. And really, these are designed to be self-assessments. And so you would look and see where you feel you have some strengths and where maybe there's some areas that you'd like to focus on to improve. And then the regional coordinator can help access resources, support, training, whatever is necessary to help you move forward in that direction. So like I said, this is a new approach. We developed it a year ago, and we're just kind of testing it out across the state with all districts this year. And so hopefully we'll get some good feedback. Hopefully we're moving in a good direction and providing you all with support and resources that you need to be successful. So with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Steve now to talk about the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Are we sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, thanks, John. Yeah, Natural Resources Conservation Service. That was where I spent my career, 32 years, all around the state, assisting conservation districts. And if you remember what we talked about earlier with Hugh Hammond Bennett, when they created the standard state soil conservation district law, and the states adopted it, it was kind of like, well, states, if you allow districts to be formed, and when they are formed at the county level, we will send our people in to help you. And so that's how this agency was born. It's a federal agency that helps districts implement their plans on private lands for conservation. It's all voluntary program. We can't force anybody to get a conservation plan unless I will make one caveat: if they have highly erodible land and they're participating in farm bill programs, they do need to have a plan. But other than that, all of our programs have always been voluntary, and the technical assistance is free. The programming that you bring into the county through your cooperation with NRCS is great for your county. And together we can, we've done a great job. We can do a lot more. And we'll jump to the next slide. Your conservation, if you're co-located with NRCS, which many districts are, I think there's 57 NRCS offices in the state, and usually districts are co-located with NRCS, and they provide important support and assistance to the NRCS, and that's why they quite often give them free space and other in-kind things like computers and phones and things like that. But your district conservationist, who is basically the boss in the office, you should have them attending your monthly board meetings. I understand there's been some issues around the state. If the meetings are held at night, they can't get approval to go at night and things like that. If at all possible, have your district conservationist attend your board meetings with you. It's an important partnership for them and for you, and they can add to your discussions, and they have knowledge of the county and the district that they can help with. And one of the things that I don't know if very many boards are doing this, I encourage you to do this. Review and sign all the conservation plans that are prepared in the county. It's important that you know what's being done out there, who's doing the conservation across the county. These are your customers that NRCS has been brought in there to serve and help you to serve. So take an active role in that. Look at those plans. There's a place for you on those plans for the district to sign. There's a time when, as a matter of fact, I think it's about right now, when NRCS reaches out to districts and asks for input on the priorities that they should be targeting in the farm bill programs like EQIP. You know, what are your local concerns? Is it water quality? Is it grazing land management, or is it woodland management? What is it? And there's a time you work with your DC on this when you can feed your concerns and issues up through the system and focus that EQIP money the EQIP program and others like a laser beam on your issues that you have locally. So you can work with them on that. And one of the great things about having districts in the office with NRCS and working as a team is that it's a seamless service to the landowners. The landowners don't care who you work for, as long as they can come in and get assisted and get what they need and successfully install conservation. It means little to them who the district employee or the federal employee is. So it's important that we partner and work well together. In this local work group collaboration, that goes back to helping to determine what the local issues are and feeding those up through the NRCS to target the programs towards those issues. Guess we can jump to the next slide. All right, and this is going to talk about leading the local work group. Pre-COVID, our vision of the local work group was you would have all of the important agricultural and other contacts, partners in for a meeting and have a discussion about what the local resource conservation issues were in your county. It's been hard to do that the last year and a half. We may be able to get back to that, but there's other ways as well, reaching out to them through other means to gather their input. And it's important that we do that to keep our partners on board. And we can provide recommendations to NRCS on the priorities and the criteria for conservation activities and programs in our counties, and give that input to them. And then they will use that to rank the applications, the highest ranking applications that are addressing the right resource concerns or the most resource concerns will get funded with the program money. All right, we'll go to the next slide.
I'll take over here.
Yeah, that's Steve. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Steve. So again, talking about one of the other critical partners in the Michigan Conservation Partnership would be the conservation district employees in Michigan. So if MACD is sort of the holistic association for conservation districts as a whole, CDM really represents more of the employees and staff that work at your local district. So they're a nonprofit, a 501c3 as well, that focuses on strengthening Michigan's conservation district employees. They do this through programming and staff development programs as a whole, which then thereby strengthens Michigan's conservation districts. So they are comprised of a member-elected board of directors who also advocate at the state and national level for conservation districts, particularly on issues that pertain to staff and affect staff. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about other potential local partnerships. So thinking about when we said earlier about the outreach into your community in terms of connecting with other public officials at the local or state level, we wanted to kind of give you a good breakdown of people that you can potentially connect with, or organizations or bodies of government that you can connect with who can help with your overall mission of protecting your local natural resources. So we really want to emphasize the importance of connecting with your county commissioners. Your county commissioners often are a gateway to other funding strategies. I believe there are at least 9 conservation districts around the state who've successfully passed local millage campaigns, which is something that you ultimately need to get through your county commissioners first before you can get it on a ballot. So this is important to connect to committees that are particular maybe to like Parks and Recreation or involved with planning or things that are particularly important to the conservation community. One big opportunity, especially at the county level, is drain and road commissioners. A number of conservation districts around the state partner with their local drain commissioners with watershed awareness and education programming. So this could be another opportunity where your local CD could kind of fill some potential niches within the county government structure. You also are going to want to connect with municipal officials. So this could include if you have cities in your counties, or if you've got townships or villages, trying to connect with those boards that oversee those municipal entities is really important. For example, I serve as chair for Genesee Conservation District, and we partner with the city of Flint to manage the urban forests. So Jerry Miller, who's the president of MACD, reminded me it's 13 CDs have millages throughout our state. But again, Genesee Conservation District, we partner with the city of Flint to manage the urban forest here. And it's an opportunity to where we have a grant through a local foundation who paid us $210,000 on an annual basis to maintain the urban forest. So those opportunities are out there for partnership that you can potentially connect with. If you are in a region to where there is potential indigenous reservations, you can connect with tribal councils for, thinking about the different councils or committees that exist within them, agriculture and food sovereignty, as well as natural resource opportunities. And then thinking about also partnering with neighboring conservation districts. So this could be on certain grant projects like, regional conservation planning projects, RCPPs, through NRCS, or through larger grants and through the federal government, like the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Thinking about collaborating too, as well as tree sales. Some districts will partner and work together to maybe collectively purchase higher volumes of trees to bring that price down. But you might also want to think about potential watershed projects, where oftentimes the case is where watersheds span multiple counties and they don't really have much of a regard for county borders or boundaries. So it's an opportunity where your district can connect and work with other districts. So thinking about other local partnerships, if your county has a local MSU extension, this is a great partner that you can connect with, especially when you're thinking about agriculture and agribusiness, children and youth, such as 4-H, essentially, since most MSU extensions operate the 4-H program. This is a great way to connect with local farmers and youth. And thinking again about community and food and the environment. I know here in Genesee County, for an example, we have, Edible Flint, which is a local nonprofit that deals with urban gardening and getting local landowners and city dwellers the tools that they need to engage in urban farming. So we've definitely partnered in various capacities with our MSU extension and with Edible Flint. Thinking again about other partnerships, thinking about local volunteer groups such as Rotary, Kiwanis, Optimists, Lions Club, Masons, you name it. These can be really good opportunities to partner for potential volunteer projects if you're engaging in reforestation projects or rain gardens, or thinking about larger conservation cleanup projects. Volunteer groups can be excellent partners that you can connect with. And then thinking about agriculture and natural resource organizations. So thinking about your county chapter for Farm Bureau is a great group to connect with for potential opportunities. Thinking about wildlife chapters, such as like Trout or Ducks Unlimited. Thinking about watershed organizations that I know here in the case in Genesee County with the Flint River Watershed Coalition, they're something that spans multiple counties, since the watershed happens to go through several counties. And they've been great partners on a number of projects as well. And with that too, also thinking about other natural resource organizations, Sierra Club, or other folks that are environmentally minded with conservation goals that are critical. Sometimes they can act as local sources of funding. They can be supportive of overall projects, or even just signal boosting the work that you're doing in your community. And then lastly, something else to think about in terms of just other entities, local foundations can be a tremendous resource for you. Michigan is fortunate to have a number of large foundations and community foundations throughout our state. And so partnering with them can be a great way, like we partner in Genesee County with the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. These are really good opportunities where you can get funders to help support some of the projects and conservation work that you're doing locally. And then lastly, school districts. A number of districts around the state engage in educational opportunities with local students, both at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels. And by connecting with your local districts, it's a good opportunity to potentially find, again, more funding sources for some of that programming or support for some of that programming. So with that, we're going to move on to our next portion, where we're going to talk a little bit more about planning. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Steve for this.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Start my video and turn off my mute here. Planning for success. Probably the most important issue that conservation districts have to address is their long-range plan, and it's critical to your success, and it's a requirement of conservation districts. It's mentioned in the conservation district law that one of the responsibilities of the district is to develop comprehensive plans for the conservation of farmland, forest land, and natural resources. Okay, and also in the district operations manual, establish a mission with a long-range plan and a conservation needs assessment. That's your surveys and your input that you take from the public when you're developing this plan. Everybody in every walk of life usually has to prepare a business plan, a farm plan, or some kind of a plan. So this is not anything new, but doing it for the district is going to be a little bit new for you. And it's critical to have a plan, because really, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, won't it? You just come into the board meeting, or if you're a staffer, you come into the office, and whatever's going on that day, you just address it and do a good job and go home. And that is probably not going to take you to your destination. It's good staff work. It's keeping people happy and delivering what needs to be delivered right at that moment, but it's not really going to take you to your destination. MDARD encourages you strongly to have a plan. People are going to fill their time at work with the items that are important to them, or the items that they prefer to work on. And it's going to be good stuff, most likely, because we have good staff people. They do good work, but without a plan, they won't know what they should be working on that day necessarily. They'll just be putting out fires or working on the things that they are interested in and like to do. I always tell a story about a colleague of mine in the NRCS that liked to do pheasant habitat. And, that might not have been the most important thing in the county, or the most critical item that needed to be worked on in the county, but that's what he liked to do. And he didn't have anybody asking him to do anything different, so that's what he filled his time with. And it's good stuff, but it may not be the right stuff to get you down the road to success that you have in your vision for your district. Okay. I'm going to jump to the next slide. Okay, so what these business plans, these long-range plans for your district, what should they include? Well, they usually have a mission and a vision statement. And these are usually kind of statements that are worked out, amongst the board, that kind of encompasses their district and what they want to accomplish. Okay, and they should be kind of something when people read it, they kind of get motivated by it. There should be goals, objectives, timetables that are designed to get you where you want to go, and to break it down into little bites. Each year is a bite of the big plan, and they should be detailed enough so that you will know if you accomplish them or not. Okay, if you're going to do 100 acres of reforestation, and you put it down in there so that you can tell whether you accomplished it or not. It's got metrics associated with it, right? And then in the plan, the resource conservation opportunities and needs of the county will be identified. If there's a lot of farmland in the county, or a lot of forest land, what are the needs and opportunities out there? You've identified them, you've broken it down clearly enough and into bites, so that you know what you need to accomplish in a year. You're going to identify in there as well who the customers, the partners, the supporters, and possibly the funders are for this project. Who are you going to work with to do this? Are there some of these groups that Dan just mentioned? Maybe some groups that aren't the obvious ones that are out there that you need to be working with, but identify them in there and get their buy-in into the plan as well. Your district will have strengths. You say, well, we have a forester, or one of our board members is a forester, or we have people that have different knowledge, skills, and abilities, but there might be other needs for assistance. You can identify those particular strengths and abilities that you need to implement this plan. So if you have an opportunity to hire someone, you may look for those skills that you need in your plan. And the plan will serve as a roadmap to guide daily decision making. So people, every day you can come in, and if you don't know what to do, you look at that plan, and the plan will guide you. And don't just work on the things that you like to do, or the things that interest you, right? And so you're always working towards that plan. Yeah, jump ahead to the next slide here. But this method of giving this information is just not as satisfactory to me, because I like to see the people when I'm talking to them. The process of preparing the business plan, I really believe that the process you go through is possibly even more important than the plan itself, if you can believe that. You can't write these plans in a vacuum. I've worked with boards in the past, and they were great people, but they just wanted to change the date on last year's plan and resubmit it. And that's just not the way to do it. You got to get a lot of input and involve a lot of people if you want the plan to be powerful. It's the power of the plan is going to be directly related to the effort that you put forth seeking collaboration and input from people throughout your district. And when you ask them, for their input, the more time and effort the partners invest in your plan, the more motivated they're going to be to see it implemented. They're going to remember that they talked to you about it, and that you took into consideration some of the things that they said and put them, ranked them high in your plan, and man, they really want to see it get done too. And some people be afraid that you call in all these other groups and take their input, that you're going to lose control of the program, but that's not the case. You're just going to you're going to get a better product, and you're going to have a lot more support for the plan when it's done, based on how much you're asking for input from folks. So don't be afraid of that. Next slide, please. Okay, this little slide is designed to show you that everybody has their objectives. The landowner has their objectives and what they would like to achieve. The district has objectives, and NRCS has issues that it's like to work on, because NRCS is a federal agency. So a lot of times things come down from on high, like buffer initiatives or seasonal high tunnel initiatives and things like that. But if you look in the center, there's a place where all those objectives overlap. It should be bigger than that. If I knew how to make this slide different, I would make it bigger than that. But we do have a lot of shared objectives, and there's places where they will overlap, and we can work together successfully. And we have to find those. That's really the low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of people motivated to achieve those. So look for those where those objectives overlap, and put those in your plan. Rank them high in your plan. Next slide, please. All right, so part of the planning process I like to call scoping, and think about the old submarine movie where they up periscope, and they run it up there, and they look all around the landscape through the periscope and try to identify all the issues out there. Okay, that's what we do when we're scoping. We can look at all the existing documents and plans that have been prepared by partners and others over the years. A lot of times plans get prepared, but there's no money to implement them, so they kind of get shelved. But there's a lot of good information in there, and a lot of the things that were identified as needing to be done never did get done. So look at those existing documents and plans, and one of the most important things is the county master plan. The counties they call them different things: master plans, comprehensive plans. But there's a lot of objectives in there that are wished for conditions that you can include in your work that you're planning to do. Make personal contact with leaders and decision makers in the district and inquire about what they think the most pressing resource concerns are, such as talk to your county commissioners, Farm Bureau, livestock, commodity groups, wildlife groups. Buy them a cup of coffee, visit with them for 10, 15 minutes and find out, or invite them to a meeting, find out what their concerns are. They have plans as well, a lot of those groups, and get copies of their plans. the Pheasants Forever or the Trout Unlimited. Get copies of their plans and find out what it is that they are trying to accomplish. There might be a way we can work together. You can, when you're scoping, you can have meetings. We want to get back to where we can have meetings with humans again instead of just Zoom meetings. But however you can do that to gather the resource concerns, those are good ways to do that. Find out how the district can help them implement their own plans. Back when we had the buffer initiative on the streams and drains, Pheasants Forever was really excited about that, and we worked really closely with them. They provided seed. They helped us a lot to promote the buffer program and get a lot of buffer strips on the streams and drains, and that was helping them to accomplish their plantings that they wanted to put out there in the countryside for wildlife. So we were both getting something out of that. And then encourage your partners to participate in the development of the district's business plan. And, they have some resources as well. I don't have a good handle on how much money a Pheasants Forever chapter or some of these other groups handle in a year, but it could be, $30,000-$40,000. So they're not broke. I've been to some of their banquets and I know how the money moves around at those banquets. So they may have some resources to dedicate towards your implementation of your plan as well. Next slide. Okay, and stay open to opportunities. These plans are not written in stone. So once you have a plan, you can adjust it based on opportunities that come about. Stay on the offense. Look for opportunities to do more of something or do something better or bring in more partners or whatever it is. As you go and implement your plan over the course of the 5 years, your partners may change, their dedication may change, and the resources that you have available may change over time. So you need to stay flexible and update the plan as needed. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. That's sometimes overused, but it's true. We had in Clinton County a situation where a drain was cleaned out and nothing had been done with it for 60 years. And of course it looked terrible when it was done. It wasn't that they did a bad job, it's just that it was an eyesore. And the county commissioners were getting calls, the people were very upset. And we used that as a way to sell buffer strips to the county commissioners and get some support from the county to do more buffer strips along the streams and drains. So sometimes when you have a crisis like that, there will be some political will that and support that can come out of that for the district. So look for those opportunities. And as you go implementing your plan, you may find that projects that were needed when the plan was prepared, but you couldn't build the support, you couldn't find the partners or the funding or whatever at that time, they may become feasible due to unforeseen circumstances. There may be a new program or a new issue in the county that makes these things seem like they can be done now and before they couldn't. So that may happen. Be prepared for that, and you can adjust your plan and go forward. And report your accomplishments to your partners regularly, county commissioners, other partners, quarterly, semi-annually at least. Keep when you plan, do it in a way that you can record your progress and in a way that people understand. And I remember years ago somebody told me in Washington they were talking to a staffer for a politician about terraces that they were building. And the staffer said, I think that's crazy. People are building a place for people to sit outside and drink coffee. Well, he didn't even understand what it was that we were doing. So we take it for granted that people understand what we're doing. We shouldn't do that. And so you need to report to them in a metric that, dollars, miles, acres, or a way that they understand when you do that. Next slide. All right. So there's a cycle probably a 5-year cycle in this case that you'll go through, where at the top you'll do your needs assessment, and that is your work to figure out what needs to be done in the county. What's the term for that, John? What that needs assessment? There's another term for it.
Yeah, we used to call it the resource assessment. But
There you go,
we
resource
changed it
assessment.
to conservation needs
Yeah.
assessment. Yeah.
I'm 62 now, so I forget words. Resource assessment. That's your conservation needs assessment. So you're looking out, you're scoping, you're looking around, trying to find out what needs to be done. And then you've got your partners and supporters and your objectives of your plan, and you break those down into goals and priorities. And you're going to include in that your measures of success, miles, acres, people served, etc. And you're going to report and communicate what it is that you've accomplished on a regular basis. And it will all be towards the accomplishment of your mission and a part of your vision for your district. So this 5-year cycle is just going to go round and round and round. Okay. So you'll be planning your work and you'll be working your plan. Next slide. All right. Now this is not when we were doing this live, this was not mine, but I'm glad to take it. Districts are a unit of government, but like many units of like other units of government, they don't get funded. Okay, their funding model is actually more like a nonprofit model. So if you look at the squiggly lines here, the for-profit model on the left, the customer gives money to the company for a product that the company gives to the customer, and the wheel goes round and round. The nonprofit model, you need a donor. So that could be the donor could be the grant, or it could be some other source of funds, county or state funding, or some other source of funds comes to the district. The district creates the product that donation was based on, and the product goes to the customer, which is the landowner, and it doesn't go back around. That's the nonprofit model. In the government model, the customer gives money to the company, and the company creates the product back to the customer. And the conservation district model, we don't know where the money comes from, comes to the company, creates the product, goes to the customer. This was done, explained a whole lot better by our consultant who used to do it. But the thing that you need to remember is that even though you're a unit of government, of course, you're not funded by the government, at least not totally. So one of the big things that district directors have to do is to find funds for the district. That is one of the most important jobs of the district directors. Next slide. All right, possible revenue sources. And I'm sure that if you folks, if we were meeting together, you could add a lot to this. There's grants. We chase grants. When I started, we didn't do grants. When I started in '83, we didn't know how to do grants. And I remember we had a retiree from the DNR came to the district in Hillsdale and said, "Hi, I'm Merle Raber. I want to write grants for you." And we about fell out of our chairs. In the first year he was there, he got us $50,000 worth of grants. So grants since then have turned into a major part of a district's revenues. Municipalities or county appropriations, as Dan said, we have 13 districts now that have millages. We have, boy, a handful that are talking about pursuing millages soon. That is an appropriation that's voted for by the people. Some districts have appropriations from the county that are annual, and $10, $15, $20, $30,000 annually that the commissioners agree to provide, and they should. I talked millages, donors. Donors does not make up such a big part of district funding. Events, Districts do have some events and do more fee for service and sales, the tree sales. And if you don't have calluses on your hands and your hands aren't all puckered right now, it's because you didn't work at the tree sale just recently. Tree sales are important. Tree sales were started to fill a need, and now they fill a need and they provide tremendous funding for districts. And so they're important. They'll probably never go away, but sometimes I think we overplay that tree sale part of our business. There's probably other sources of revenues. Always be on the lookout for them. We need them. We need to exploit all those we can. All right, next slide. Grant sources. Of course, Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development gives grants to districts to implement programs that they want implemented, like MEAP and forestry and so forth. A portion of that grant is for administrative efforts to implement that particular grant. It's not general operations funding for the district. But MDARD puts out, what was it, $7 million worth of grants, and they go to about 55 of the 75 districts. So there's a good 20 districts out there that aren't getting a grant from MDARD. Department of Natural Resources has grants. I think is HAP, is that one of their grants? Hunter Access Program, there's a number of others. Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Eagle. I believe the watershed 319 grants come through them. Local units of government may have grants. Community foundations, districts, I don't think are exploiting those to the extent that they probably could. Usually every reasonable sized town has a community foundation that you can look at, and they have many different funds that you may be able to compete for grants in. Federal agencies have grants like the RCPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program through NRCS, and tribal. I'm not as familiar with tribal, but there's a number of tribes around the state, and probably it would be worthwhile looking at potential partnerships and grant funding from them as well. Next slide. All right. I wish I could ask if there were any questions, but I don't.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Well, just a reminder, we will open it up for questions at the end. So
okay, good.
So with that, just wanted to move on while we continue this conversation about funding. So this is something that I wanted to add to this training session that we haven't traditionally pushed in the past, and something in a past life that I personally did before coming on as MAC's executive director. I was a legislative staffer for a state representative, and before that I was an active campaigner who worked on a number of political campaigns. And again, as thinking about yourselves as public servants, this is an opportunity where we can potentially solicit donations from folks within our own personal networks to support the work that we do as directors on our local boards. So if we want to go to the next slide, again, we can talk about how conservation districts, your local units of government, and as local units of government, and I'll kind of wait here, Christy, or if you want, I can take over on my end too.
Dan, I'm sorry, I turned over control to you. It should be working.
Okay, I don't.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. All right, thanks. So again, thinking about donors, oops, I don't know if it's, oh well. So, since conservation districts are units of government, we're able to solicit charitable donations under section 170C1 of the Internal Revenue Code, if the contribution is made for a public purpose. So as directors, you can reach out to your personal networks to secure donations to your district. So since you function as the boosters for your district, so to speak, this is one of the greatest ways that you can engage in outreach to your community, so more people are aware of the critical conservation work that you're doing locally. So This next section, we want to talk about maybe the idea of like organizing a personal call-a-thon from home with your fellow directors. So if we think about this, again, with my background in campaigning, candidates often spend a majority of their time making phone calls to folks within their personal network. And, if all 5 board members called 25 people within your networks and you're able to solicit donations of $100 each, you just raised $12,500 for your district. That is sometimes more than an entire tree sale worth of revenue that you could be raising for your district. So, if all 5 board members called 50 people in your networks and then solicited donations of $100 at each call, you just raised $25,000 for your district. That's enough for a part-time position to where you could even hire someone part-time to work on grants or to work on other capacity building measures. So, there's a lot of power that we have as directors being able to leverage our personal networks. One thing I'm going to share here in the chat, you're welcome to access that later, and I'll again share it as in the email address to follow up, or in the email that I send after this. And this is just a spreadsheet that gives you a good format to think about this activity that we're going to do now, to think about who's in your network. So again, who is in your network? Let's take a few minutes to think about this. So, with which family members did you have a good relationship? Are there any family members, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandchildren, anyone that you know that you have a really good relationship with? The thing is that generally those that are in your life want to support you in what you're doing. So think about folks that you can immediately call that would be someone that would be able to chip in anywhere from $20, $25 to $100. Friends, with which friends do you often get lunch or dinner together? And this is maybe a question that's more posed pre-pandemic, but after the pandemic's over, who are the first people that you want to get together with to grab lunch or dinner, or maybe have a dinner party? These would be folks that are definitely in your immediate circle that you want to include in your call network. Thinking about classmates. So with which classmates do you still communicate? Maybe folks that you went to high school with, or if you went to college, who did you go to college with? One of my college mates was on this call earlier, who also is an associate director down in Oakland Conservation District. So he's definitely someone I would call if I was looking for a donation. Thinking about colleagues, who do you work with right now at your main job that might support you as a director? Or people that you've worked with in the past, people that you had a really good, strong working relationship maybe at a previous job. These are folks that are definitely people that you can connect with. And then thinking about neighbors, which of your neighbors' garden? Who are the more environmentally conscious neighbors that are around you in your immediate vicinity? So thinking as well, maybe about friends of friends. So who do your friends know? Do they have any connections to other local donors, funders, or community foundations? So here in Flint, I know there are several really well-off doctors that like to support a number of charitable causes. I'm not friends with them directly, but I certainly have friends that are friends with them. So thinking about that potential network too, to where maybe your friends are willing to provide their contact information to allow you to reach out to them. And then thinking about childhood friends. So who are some of your best friends when you were growing up? Who did you used to play, baseball or kick the can with on a regular basis that you still have their contact information? These are always good opportunities to reconnect. So as you think about each question and you go through kind of each sort of section of people in your network, think about it and then log their names and information that come up in the spreadsheet that I just provided. So the ask, now the hard part, right? So asking for donations from friends and loved ones can feel a little bit awkward. But the thing is that as a director, you're a public official engaging in public service. People want to support you and your endeavors. So by reaching out to them, you can actually use donation calls as an excuse to reconnect and catch up with people from your past. Use the first couple of minutes to say, hey, how's it going? How are the kids? How's the wife? Good to hear from you. This is what I'm doing. Oh, hey, by the way, I'm a director on my local conservation district's board. This is what I'm doing now, and this is some of the programming that we do. And one of the things that we can do is we can actually solicit donations. So I'm calling you to see if we can get some support. Can I count on a donation of $25? So this is the really important point that I want to make, is that the hard ask. How do you make a hard ask for someone? with someone. So, in this instance, asking a question that can only be answered in yes or no is a hard ask. So rather than tiptoeing around and say, oh, we could really use your support, and do you think maybe I could count on it? It's kind of wishy-washy. So with a hard ask sounds more like, hey, this is what we do. Can I count on a donation of $100 from you to support Genesee Conservation District? So making them answer that yes or no question and putting them in that position where they've got to give you a definitive answer is going to be much more effective than kind of giving them a window to potentially skirt out of it or find an excuse not to donate. So another point is to really adjust your donation to the person that you're soliciting. If you know that someone's a doctor and a lawyer and they make six figures, then don't be afraid to ask for more. Ask for $500. If you know full well that this person's a charitable person that donates to other causes, or if there's someone on the other end of the spectrum that if they're retired, they're on a limited income, maybe $25 might be appropriate for them. But again, people want to support you and people want to be part of what you're doing. And so the really important part to wrap all of it up is that once you get that yes from them, it's really important that your district has a click to donate link on your website. Then you can direct them right to that, and you can even process that over the phone with them. You could even say, hey, could I take your credit card information down right now and I can process the transaction and we're good to go? And then boom, 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 done, easy. And this is something that we've really underutilized as boards, as directors, that we really think there's a lot of potential here. Like I said, if every single board member reaches out to their network and calls 25 to 50 people, you could raise a lot of money for your district in a short amount of time with a limited amount of effort. And thinking about how much time and effort goes into our other fundraisers like the tree sale, this is something that is a phenomenal opportunity to really get a big bang for your buck in terms of your volunteer service. So with that, we are going to start wrapping things up here. We're actually at about 90 minutes, almost on the dot. So, we're going to keep things going here for a question and answer if anyone has any questions. And again, this is a chance to maybe take a few minutes before we kind of get started on questions, to just reflect individually and then share in the chat, one thing that you hope to bring back to your district. And then again, there will be a follow-up survey that's going to be in the follow-up email. So expect that here within the next day or so as I kind of get that typed up and sent out to everyone who attended. So with that, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions and answers. If anyone, you can either type it in the chat or if you want, you can unmute yourself and we can go ahead and get into it that way.
And Dan, I see we have a comment from Carol Hart who says, we are utilizing the Friends of Conservation Group for this function, has been a great benefit. And I'm pretty sure she's referring to the fundraising and soliciting donations and support as you were speaking there. So that's a great point, Carol. There are several districts who have developed the Friends of their district, and they can play a very important role.
Yeah, that's a great model. Great opportunity, Carol. Thanks for sharing. So you can also raise your hand, and we can do it this way. If you have a question, you can go and click on participants, and then there's an option at the bottom that'll say raise hand. And we can try to call on everyone as your hands go up. So I see Dennis Meyer, you're first. Go ahead.
Can you hear me, Dan?
Yep.
Okay. I'm on a board down in Monroe County. And, there's all the talk about NRCS being, a big partner and everything. We got a big issue keeping the DC down here. And I've talked to Gary Lee about it and different things. Every time you get somebody you can kind of work with, they disappear. We're currently without one. We're sharing with Lenawee. And we got all kinds of conservation plans we can't put into action because we don't have anybody. Any ideas on help for that for us?
So yeah, that's a tough one, Dennis. I know NRCS is planning on making several hires this summer. I would say if they've got public postings for the positions, if you know of anyone who might be good potential fits, encourage them to apply. Definitely if they've got the public postings, share them on your own website, share them on your social media, and we can sort of collectively help get the word out there about the opportunities that are there. Unfortunately, it's talent attraction and retention right now in conservation is a bit of a struggle for a lot of different districts. And there's definitely a shortage of labor, of people going into the field. So it's hyper competitive. And and maybe John or Steve might also have some additional suggestions as to what local districts can do to help NRCS maybe find a DC.
Yeah. I'll just add, we're seeing a lot of transition right now, Dennis, in really across the board in all sectors, and especially in NRCS. There's, again, with everything, there's an aging workforce. There's folks that are retiring, which opens up new opportunities for younger folks, and a lot of people are moving around and taking opportunities. I'm glad to hear that you've reached out to Gary Lee to encourage him to fill that position as quickly as possible. The last couple of years, they have had some restrictions on their ability to hire and fill positions.
Yeah. I know they've had hiring restrictions, but
yeah, luckily that's been lifted, and they've been able to start filling not only vacancies as they occur, but actually start ramping back up some of the workforce here in Michigan, which is good news. But even then, they've, as an agency nationally, they've really struggled in getting qualified candidates into those positions. So I would encourage, if you haven't, write a letter on behalf of the board to Gary Lee, and really just kind of stay on him to help encourage him to get that position filled as quickly as possible.
well, I got his personal cell number, so I can hotline him.
There you go.
I had a face-to-face with him when I was county farm bureau president, and because we're in the heart of the WLEB down here, and with issues with that, and I ended up getting a grant through them through our county farm bureau, and I still got money there that I can probably tap into conservation to have meetings or something like that too. So, but I need some DC there to have somebody to work with,
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Great. Thanks, Dennis. Good question. We appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Dan, we did have one earlier. I got a direct message asking about associate directors and kind of the role that they can play and kind of the sideboards around them. And so just to kind of share with the group, associate directors are essentially a volunteer function of the district. There's no conservation district law is silent as it relates to associate directors. So really it falls to each district to determine through policy if they want to have associate directors, and if they do, what the role of those folks might be, and maybe the number of them. There's no, again, district law is silent, so there's no limit on the number of associate directors that a district could have if they chose to. And then generally they serve a few different functions, sometimes something very specific if the district needs some additional support or expertise in maybe accounting and finances, or fundraising, or organizing events, or managing volunteers. They might bring an associate on to do those specific activities. And then generally they also serve to kind of help fill the bench, so that if there is transition that occurs, if a director resigns, there's someone who's aware of how the district functions, how they work, and they can kind of slide into that position and without starting over from scratch with someone who doesn't know, what's going on with the district. So, and again, I think we have some resources about that in the operations manual as well. But it was a good question. I just wanted to share that with the group.
Let me add a little bit to that, John. Associate directors are a great way to take control of getting this knowledge, skills, and abilities that you need, and getting them associated with your board, and building your bench so that when you do have vacancies, you got these people, as John mentioned, to slide in there. If you're sitting back and trusting the fates to send you good directors, that's not a good way to get good directors. I mean, you will get some, but that's not the best way. Be proactive, go out and find people, encourage them to be an associate, and get them involved and interested, and then you'll have some great directors down the road.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for sharing the question, John, and thanks for your comments, Steve. Do we have any other questions? Does anyone else? Again, you can put it in the chat if that's easier, if you don't feel comfortable or if you don't have a good connection. Or if you want to turn your camera on and raise your hand or start talking, we're happy to take some questions.
Well, I would just say, Dan, sometimes people, especially if there's new people with us, they don't know what they don't know yet. And as they spend more time with the district, if they have questions or issues that they would like assistance with, for sure, all of us, I believe, would be glad to have you contact us directly.
Yep. So yeah, great point, Steve. So thanks for sharing that. And yep, we are at your disposal, and we're here to be a resource for you. So I'm going to just include in the chat my email address. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out. And again, I definitely want to encourage everyone to get connected to our Slack workspace. This is something that is a great new tool that really we've opened it up to the entire conservation district community throughout the state. So if you haven't joined our Slack workspace too, I just included a link in the chat there. I definitely want to encourage you to do that. With that, if we don't have any other questions, I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. And I just want to one last thing. I just want to thank all of you for not only attending tonight, but thank you for being public servants and for stepping up into this role. This is something that not a lot of people do. So we are incredibly appreciative of your efforts and your volunteerism to take on this role. So thank you for doing that. And for those who were just elected this year, congratulations on winning your election. That's definitely exciting. And if you were appointed by chance by your local board, congratulations on your appointment. So we hope that this training was helpful. And again, this will be available on MACD's YouTube channel for later review. I know we went through things pretty fast and we threw a lot of information at you. So you're welcome to revisit it at a later time. And please reach out to MACD and use us as a resource. And we're happy to be here for you to make your job easier in any possible way. So thanks, everyone. And with that, I don't know if John or Steve, if you have anything else you want to add and close us out, but thank you for joining us tonight. And I'll turn it over to John and Steve.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I'll just say thanks for everyone for attending, and a special thanks to Dan and MACD for hosting this training and pulling everyone together here. And I know we threw a lot at you, but like Dan said, we're here for you to help out. So take advantage of these resources, and look forward to working with you and hopefully seeing you all in person one of these days.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good evening.